I'd like to call this special meeting of the City Commission of Monday, July 30th, 2018 to order. And start with a pledge of allegiance, if you'd all join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 22 years I used to turn that way. Okay. First of all, we need an approval for the agenda. We have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. First item of business. Should be a short one, right? Discussion of the sewer and road repair projects.
Yes, the commission had asked staff to present information on a number of different scenarios. In your packet, you have maps with millage information behind each of the scenarios. So I'll go through your packet so that you can put it into context. The first one is if we were going to do sewer repairs only and just the replacement part of the repairs, not the sewer relining, which we are planning to do with funds that we collect on the water bill. It does not include the pipe bursting. So this would be the replacement work only. And this map shows you what streets the replacements are going to be done. There will be other sewer replacement work done, but it'll be in backyards and not in the roads or in the right-of-way, so not in the road. And then behind that map is a schedule of the millage if you were going to bond for that, the millage that would be required for a 10, 15, and 20-year bond. Scenario number 2 would be that as long as, with this here, with the sewers only, we would open up the road, replace the sewer, and then cover the road back up and basically put it back to its previous condition and not do any improvements to it. The second would be that as long as the road is cut open and we're putting in new sewers, taking a look at doing the road reconstruction at the same time. And if you compare the two maps, you'll see Nadine is a good example. Just part of Nadine is actually going to be opened up for the sewer replacement, but we are suggesting that the entire lot be reconstructed as long as we've got it partially opened up. So this particular scenario would be to reconstruct the roads over where the sewer replacements are going to go, and you could see that we've expanded the range of the work that's going to be done more than just where the sewers are going to be replaced. And then again, there's an estimated cost and then the millage rate if you do a 10, 15, or 20-year bond for that scenario. The third scenario is the same as the second, but if you take a look at the Borgman York area, there are what I call adjacent roads, and it's so even though Borgman is not going to have any sewer work done underneath it, we do have 4-inch water main. We have 4-inch water main on York that we would be replacing as long as we're doing the sewers and the roads. And the suggestion from DPW and the engineers is that as long as the roads are going to be barricaded and you've got all the manpower there, you might as well get rid of all of the 4-inch main and bring the city up to 6-inch main. But of course, there's a cost to go along with that. So with scenario number 3, again, millage rates if you do a 10, 15, and 20-year bond. And then at the last commission meeting, Commissioner Jenks had asked for numbers if we were to do a separate road program in addition to the sewer work that could be a standalone bond issue. So we put together scenarios, actually the bond advisors put together the scenarios for a $3, $4, $5, and $6 million bond for a road reconstruction. So 4 different scenarios. We have Pat McGow, the bond attorney here, so that he can write the appropriate language and we can get it approved by the August 14th deadline. The bond advisors, if you have any questions about how that works, Tim Germain, if you have any construction questions about the process, and then Rocco, of course, DPW, and Tim in finance. We are ready for your discussion and ready for your questions.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner.
I would be curious, so maybe to Rocco and to you, so how much construction could the city bear in any given year? I mean, so repairing, essentially replacing all the sewers and doing all these roads, that's a lot of construction. So are we, city manpower, you know, sort of oversight-wise, what do you feel is too much, where we just would not be able to stomach that much or be involved in that much construction in any given year? Because I personally would lean toward maybe doing the sewers plus the impacted roads plus the adjacent roads if we think that that's not going to put too much on our plate for that construction period.
Go ahead. This is a lot smaller project than what we're doing right now, right?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Over the last 23 years, we've been working on roads in the city, and we've averaged anywhere from a low of $1.2 million all the way up to $2.7 million. So I would say that it's not the amount of volume that has to happen or the cost of the improvements. It's just quantifying it and getting that out early enough to get a bid. So I would say that safely we could do $3.5 million a year.
Okay.
And that's starting very early in the season, because we've always kind of tried to take the residents' summer and schedule into consideration as well. But you know, we try to get it paid before the leaves fall and the November cutoff. So we kind of work backwards from there. In many years we've started as early as April if the winter weather's great, and some years we've delayed it into July just simply because the volume of work was less and we could squeeze it in by November. So $2.5–3 million is a pretty average number that we could safely hit every year without too much issue, in my opinion.
Okay. And then my second question would be for the bond council, and that is, do you think that it would make sense for us to finance this over a longer period of time to keep the millage rate down and the overall annual burden on residents each year down, and then if we needed in the future to borrow again, possibly like refunding this as part of some future issuance, or do you think it would make sense to just go for a shorter duration for something like this?
Well, let me address that with a couple comments about the duration of bond issues. So first, there's a legal requirement, and then there's also a financial consideration. The legal requirement is that cities are not allowed to finance improvements longer than the useful life of the asset. So usually for road projects, we usually see them most commonly done in the 10 to 15 year range. There are some road projects that you might see 20, but you've got to get an engineer to certify that it's going to last at least 20 years. So usually on your road projects, you'll usually see 10 or 15 years. Sewer, much longer useful life on the pipes. It's generally 40 years by most accounting standards. But usually communities will finance sewer lines and pipes 20 to 25 years is kind of the norm. Maybe 20 is kind of a standard duration for a municipal bond issue. As a matter of state law, you can't go any longer than 30, but very few communities go out that long. So usually 10, 15, 20 is the normal range that people look at. The rest of it's really kind of a financial consideration, which is that the shorter the bond issue, generally the lower the interest rate, but the higher the annual payment because you're amortizing over a shorter period. And so that really kind of gets into the consideration of what's a number that works for your community, as well as looking at maybe some other things that you have with your other debt and payments. So as far as refinancing, the last point on that, under state law you can refinance your debt, and the city's certainly done that in various contexts if you can actually save money. Most municipal bonds, when they're sold, are generally sold with what we call a 10-year call provision, meaning that you don't and cannot pay off the bonds in the first 10 years. Now, the financial advisors are here can talk about that. In some years, the market will accept something a little shorter, but generally, you don't have the ability to pay off bonds early for the first, let's say, 8 to 10 years. And after that, if interest rates are lower, or even if they stay the same, you're looking at a shorter bond, you can refinance to save money. But what you don't do, though, is you generally don't look to then stretch it out further. So if you're gonna pick a 15-year bond, even if you refinance it, you're generally gonna be looking at a 15-year bond if you refinance it down the road.
And if we're looking at a single ballot proposal then that's going to involve asking the voters to approve the sewer repairs and the roads, then because of that, we shouldn't look at going more than 15 because roads and sewers are in the same bond issuance?
Now, you can go longer than that. What we would do is it's sort of a blended maturity. So I don't know, Stephen, you can maybe answer that better in terms of what the options are. I mean, if you've got sewer lines in there, you can go out 20 years, but if it's more of its road, then you would tend to have more of it up towards the front. So you can adjust those maturity schedules based on how much is sewer versus road. You could still do 20 years with a blended project.
Okay, thank you.
$2.5 to $3 million will get how much in the way of road and sewer? What are we looking at, a mile and a half?
It varies depending on the complexity of whether it's a repair program or we're resurfacing or what reconstruction. So, I mean, it's usually around, for just straight roads and replacement of water main, we budget around $450 a linear foot. So, depending on how much linear foot is on the street, we've got, this year I think we have close to 2,200 or 2,400 linear feet of road. So it really varies depending on the amount of design that we put into it,
But
whether
if we
full
did,
replacement.
if we did 1 mile
One-
replacement,
1 mile is I think more than we've done in a single year before.
okay, so
But-
it will take us 25 years to replace the roads under our current scheme because we've got 25 miles of roads?
I would say this, over the last 23 years, I was just looking at the map, and I think it might be out there, we've replaced approximately 50% of the roads in the city, and there's another 50% left to go. So I would just say that would easily in the 20-year range. You know, if it takes 25, that's a budgetary or a financial restriction more than anything, but I think in the next 20 years.
So then we can plan on, with roads lasting 10, 15, 20 years, we can plan on an increase in poor quality of roads at this speed? I'm just very uncomfortable that when I moved here, the roads were in much better condition than they are today. And I think we may be going a little bit too slow. And I understand on sewer, we're at 50 miles, including the backyards.
I don't have the numbers in front of me tonight. I just got back from vacation, but whatever I said a week ago, it's close to that. I think it's 29 miles or something like that is what I recollect, but I'm not for sure.
But I don't think residents would be comfortable with a 30-year.
You're talking about more of an accelerating the program,
Yes.
simply to bring it all together in a shorter period of time. Yeah. Well, certainly, again, we've always gone on the budgeting and funding, and then we may do with whatever that budget number was each year. So if you wanted to go and accelerate that, then you've got to go, I guess, for a larger chunk of money and then bond that over the appropriate time frame.
Mr. Mayor, I have another question. I recall, and I could be wrong, that we had approximately $30 million left to bond before we reach our maximum allowable debt under the state law. Is that about right?
That sounds right, but Tim could look it up.
So my thought is, however much we're going to borrow here, say it gets close to about 15 million, somewhere around there. That leaves us with, another 15 million. We've talked about looking at potentially, pension obligations. Now we're throwing roads into it. I mean, I just want everybody to know there's no like unlimited source of debt we can issue. So eventually we're going to max out. So I just want to be careful that priority-wise, we decide that this is the priority versus this is the priority because eventually we're gonna be maxed out.
We have $31 million
There you go.
available.
Yep, so it's something to consider.
Mr. Mayor. So with the road construction, sewer and adjacent road over repairs, does that include any sort of resurfacing? Or is that something we would need above and beyond?
Oh, that's a complete reconstruct.
Right, these are complete reconstruction.
Can I
So-
say one thing also? Also on Nadine, the water main, it wasn't planning on getting replaced. So that cut quite a bit of cost out of it. The main was put in 1989. So not every road is getting, so we looked at it as the 4-inch needs to go, the road's okay, but Nadine, the road's bad, the sewer's bad, but the water main's good. So every project, we'd look at it that way. You know, down in Ludlow, that's an early 1950s main, so you might as well do it if you're doing the road. So, like I said, not every road, just because you're taking it out, we'll put the main back.
Well, and you don't have to completely reconstruct every road either. do you?
No, but Nadine is one I would do, and that's a 3-month window because you have school there.
Yeah,
So you need to get that in and get it done, but that road's needed.
yeah, it
So
is.
just put it.
Thank you. So that's not including the cost for like a resurfacing. Do we have any idea? I mean, it's gonna reconstruct these particular roads, but we were talking about the ability to do other projects that could just be a simple resurfacing, and is that something that we need to bond for as well, or is that figured into the cost here?
If I could answer, the reconstruction cost I think Amy has in
Yeah.
there is the maximum cost to fix the road in the right way.
Okay.
So any type of repair less than a full reconstruct, like a resurfacing or limited curb installation or only partial installation on one side, will be much lower, and that should be in that number safely.
Okay.
Because you might be able to get 2 roads for one if we resurface them. But again, you aren't really replacing curb and gutter, you're not fixing driveways, you're not fixing all the other amendments and issues that exist. You're not fixing drainage, so if it drained very slowly, you're just taking out the pavable ride surface, putting it back in again, and it'll be smooth, but, it
It's not
doesn't
gonna
correct
drain better,
the
right.
40, 50, 60-year-old issues, so.
So,
Mayor? Can I address the debt issue, or debt obligation, debt margin, excuse me? The legal debt margin is 10% of taxable value of the community plus taxable equivalents. You don't have really any because you have no industrial properties. That number changes every year based upon 3 things. The amount your taxable value increases, the amount of debt that comes off your books, and the amount of debt that goes on your books. So if you issue $1 million but pay off $100,000, you only get an increase of $900. If your taxable value goes up by 1%, you get an additional 1%, which could be,
Sure.
okay.
So that's a good point, but I don't know that we have any debt that's coming
you have
off
debt
the
coming
books
off annually, yes.
anytime.
Well, every year we pay our debt payments.
But a significant, do we have a significant amount?
I think the first one that'll be paid off in full is 2024.
Okay.
But you're paying off the
Every year we pay
prior
off.
road bonds. Those were issued for.
Like in this
15
coming year, we're gonna pay $1.3 million off
Okay.
the debt.
So that's, I wanted to point that out, that
Great.
that changes. So, yeah, thank you, Pat. You pay off, you're showing the county share issue.
Yeah,
about
that's
two.
including the county, yeah.
Yeah, so you're paying off about 1.3 every year until 2025. And then it drops considerably to less than $1 million a year.
what these scenarios do not take into account are the cost for the pipe bursting. That still needs to be sorted out, and the cost to do the reconstruction on the rest of the roads. That's something that is being forwarded to the Long Range Budget Committee to take a look at timing, because, and what roads should be reconstructed, whether we should do just the ones that are in worse shape or kind of bad shape, and have them come back with a recommendation. And they may recommend mill and overlay in order to get more bang for your buck, but of course then that shortens the length of the wear on the road. So there's, again, a lot of balancing
Yeah.
and a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration. But these scenarios here are the replacement type of repair for the sewers, and then the roads that are over where those repairs are gonna be made.
So this does not deal at all with any of the work in the backyards?
It does not.
It does
Yes, it
Oh,
does.
yes, I'm
If the-
sorry,
If
yeah,
the sewer is
sewer
on the
replacement.
list of major repair,
Yes.
Okay.
and it's in the backyard, it is,
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
it is in this.
Mr. Mayor, just so that I'm clear, the project, according to the list here, the project cost for doing the roads, does that mean finishing the roads in the city? Or just the ones where we can combine it with the sewer?
Just the ones combined with the sewer.
And so if we do both, it's 11,855,
No. 7,845,000?
but if we wanna finish the roads in their entirety,
No, there's no proposal on this page that represents
okay, that's,
all the.
so what is the 11,855?
That is if the city did the sewer replacements and did $6 million worth of road work. We
That's
don't,
all the sewer, not just the major issue ones, that's.
well, no, that's just the repair only, or I'm sorry, replacement only. So it's the replacement only for the sewer replacement, project, but then it's an additional $6 million worth of road work, which could go wherever, it was best utilized.
And that's every 2 years, so it's really 1.5 million a year.
I'm looking for the most encompassing work we can do, because, I realize that we're comparing the sewers and the streets, but both are vital infrastructure, projects, both are vital to the value of the homes in Huntington Woods in terms of supporting that value. Not knowing what interest rates are going to be going forward, if we thought we had in other words, obviously this isn't my bailiwick, that's why we got that slick guy from Miller Canfield here, I assume, we're a bond counsel to advise us, but it's not my bailiwick, but I'm just looking for what is going to accomplish the most. I mean accomplish, do, I don't mean project, I don't mean vacillate or contemplate, I mean do something. The sewers have to be, in my opinion, the sewers are first. We have to do that, because that's the roads people don't like, the sewers mortify people. And so, real or conceived, it's a problem that has to be dealt with, so, my question to the people that understand the financing aspect is, isn't it better to do it when we know right now that the interest rates are low or lower than who knows what they might be in 2 years, or 3 years or 4 years, depending on the economy and trade wars and everything else we got going on, so what do you,
I mean, interest rates are only gonna go up from right now, obviously, so.
that's what most people seem to think, so doesn't it, I'm just looking from a common sense perspective, again, I'm not looking for, this isn't my day-to-day bailiwick, so, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of a resident of the city and a homeowner, I want the most, like with Joe, I wanna see the most number of trucks we can get in here to get this stuff done, cause that's what I think people wanna see. I know it's gonna cost money, everybody knows it's not free, but they want it done. And based on what, is going on in the city right now in terms of property values, what people are willing to pay for homes in here, they want something. And that includes a decent sewer system that they don't have to worry every time it rains, and roads that they can drive on without worrying about blowing out a tire every time they go down it. So, I'm for the most we can do that makes sense, but I'm for trying to do as much as we can.
I'm gonna jump in for a second and just point out that these numbers you're looking at and options you're looking at. None of them include any sewer work other than the replacement of the worst part. There's another projected $6,400,000 of pipe bursting that we need to seriously look at in the very near future, because it's gonna be a problem.
Well, then we need, like I said, sewers, definitely number one, but I don't think we should treat the roads as a minor, something we'll get to whenever we get to it. I wanna see definitive action here.
The idea behind option number 3, which looked at replacing the worst part of the sewer system, both under the roads and in other backyard places in the city, along with the complete replacement of the roads that were dug up
Impacted.
by the sewer replacement, is gonna cost, $7.8 million. And I think that we would be hard pressed to get that much work done in 2 years' time. 2 or 3 years. We might be able to get it done in 2. That's a lot of work to do in 2 years.
3D more realistic.
And that gives us the time to look at the rest of the sewer system and all the roads and come up with a plan, which is what we're asking our long-range committee to look at, and put something on the table to address the worst of those issues. Even that may be too much for us to take on. But we'll be able to have good information to make that decision on, and in the meantime, we're not standing still doing nothing.
No.
We're replacing some roads that need to be replaced, and certainly addressing the worst part of our sewer
I'm just
system.
trying to convey my sense overall of being, I'd rather be accused of being too ambitious than not ambitious enough with these projects. I'd rather go as far as we can, is what I think.
Mr. Mayor, I was just thinking, so isn't there a limit on if we wanted to just say, all right, we know what interest rates are now, let's look at all the sewer repairs and all the road replacement, and it's a massive amount, and then we go out for a bond. If we can't complete that work in a reasonable amount of time, are we able to do that? I mean, are we gonna run into some legal issue where we bonded for work that, it's 5 years later and we haven't gotten to this sewer repair or this road repair?
Sure. So what you're thinking of is, there is a time limit on how much time you have to spend money from a bond issue. And the rule is, it's in the tax code, that you have to expect to spend the money from a bond issue within 3 years. Now, oftentimes what we'll do, and as we did with the road projects that were just most recently done, is you can approve a bond proposal for X dollars and then split it into multiple issues. So if you remember the road project that was done in 2013, and then the city issued bonds in 2014, or 15 and 17, I think. So we did 2 years worth of construction with each bond issue. So that's a way to manage that. So you can ask for a proposal that's larger, but if you have more than 3 or 4 years worth of work, we would look to split that into different bond issues. The voters approve the larger amount, but you don't actually issue the bonds, and you also don't lock in the interest rate until you actually sell them.
Right.
So what you've done is you've gotten the voters to approve a multi-year program with multiple bond issues. And the financial advisors,
Nor does it affect your debt margin until you issue.
right,
Right.
and you don't pay interest on it, so that's the
So
other
I mean, there
consideration.
wouldn't be a huge benefit into going out in some massive amount now, because we wouldn't be able to complete all the work in time, and we would end up subject to whatever the market interest rate is at the time we were ready to actually issue to do work, that we could complete in a 5-year time period.
Well,
uh,
the benefit would be getting the approval. You get the approval for everything now.
That would be the benefit, which would be the voters would have approved the entire project, regardless of how many years that
And
is.
you issue bonds for the period that you're actually gonna do
Oh, yeah,
construction.
I'm aware of that, yeah.
But
I'm
we
just-
have approval in general for a higher amount.
Right, but we're not locking in a 3.5% interest rate, is my point. That if we
but
decide we're
you're
gonna
also
do work
not
in the
paying
future, we'd be at
interest.
4%, or we'd be at 4.5%. So there's no locking in of the interest rate. I mean, you're right, we have the approval, we can move forward, but we would be subject to whatever the interest rate is at the time. I mean, personally, I would like to see us move forward with the $7.8 million and get the worst of the sewers fixed, get the impacted and adjacent roads done, then I would say let's put that on this November's ballot. By that time, the Long Range Budget Committee would be done with their study. They come back to us about a year from now. And then if we want to do the remaining issuance for the sewer lining, or pipe bursting, and for a larger road bond, that should go on November of 2019's ballot. And so there'd be an issue, a question before the voters this year, and then a question for because I think at this point, I don't know how, I know there's been some study and some rating of the roads and kind of where we're at, but I don't think we've had enough, public input, the Long Range Budget Committee input on, prioritizing that remaining list. So that's the way I think personally I'd like to go, and it's only putting off the asking for approval for the remaining sewer and the remaining roads for a year, and then it would be put before the voters in 2019.
For sure.
As I understand it, then the $7.8 million project would be a single-year project.
No,
You're planning that for multiple years as well?
2 to 3.
probably two.
Probably
3
2 to
years.
3.
Can I just add something? The reason I gave you that $2.5–3 million was with the scale of the contractor we're using now. If you package this up into one great big $7 million project and we bid that, now you got the interest of the big guys like Dan's and Iafredi and all those guys that could come in here and knock that out in a year. So we're just going under the past history that we've been using a contractor of the size and scale that's happy to do this work and does a good job with it. But if you do open up to a larger scale with the economies of scale and the pricing, you could put it out in 1 year. But now you're talking, again, big money with big contractors. So, don't let that change your opinion of whether it's doable or not. It can be bid that way, and you just get a larger contractor with the scale and equipment and people to do that. So just wanted to add that.
And you speed up your process of rebuilding your roads and your sewers. So we do not spend a lifetime and risk another flood.
Well, I don't think the flood here, because of the 2014 currents, the goal is to, that was a cataclysmic event based on an enormous amount of water. Now, given what's going on with weather patterns, it's likely that the 1 in 300 year storm is not necessarily 1 in 300 anymore, but I don't think it's fair to suggest that will prevent something like what happened in 2014. I don't think empirically we can demonstrate that, but overall the idea is to prevent it with a 1-inch rain, so we don't get concerns about that. But the cataclysmic stuff, nobody should be perceived as saying, oh yeah, this will fix that or prevent that. Nothing prevents that.
So I would say that I agree with Commissioner Rozell. I think the 7.8 million or potentially the 8.7, if we can get people in here and get it done in a year, that would be, I'd be favorable to those two options. Why, I'm just curious, I don't understand why is there not a 20-year average for the roads when you get down to the bottom, the roads 3 million, 4 million, 5 million? They stop at the 15-year average millage?
Lifetime of the road is rated at
Useful
15
life of the
years.
road only. It's
Okay.
road only, so you can only go 15 years.
Okay, but he was saying for the sewers and adjacent roads, we could go out 20 years, but down here it says 3 million for the roads or 4 million and sewer replacement, so we can't stretch that out either?
I only went up 15 on the.
Because that's all we were asked.
Oh. Okay, okay.
Is there any public comment? I should ask for that before we.
Fred Fetchheimer, live at 25832 Ivanhoe, and I don't have the benefit of the package that you have in front of you, but I would say I think the residents very much are focused upon sewers and want the sewers repaired, and I think it's a mistake to talk about doing the sewers in part with the 2018 funding with the idea of going back in 2019. I think you're going to have a lot of residents who say, hey, we just approved that, and the commissioners know what they were doing. Why aren't they coming back a second time? I think you are much better off asking, and I know nobody likes increased millage, but I think you're much better off doing as much of the sewers in one shot rather than thinking you're going to come back and do it again and again.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, Amy, we're gonna do the lining portion through the water bill capital fee. So that's gonna happen without asking the voters. The voters would just, at this point, be approving only the actual replacements. The only thing remaining would be the pipe bursting.
Any other comments or questions?
What the bond council, the bond council is gonna be looking for is the description of the project, which it sounds like right now, it's the sewers and the roads over those sewer repairs, and the length of the bond as well. Is that right, Pat?
Yes.
Can we get some consensus on the plan, and then we'll talk about the years? Commissioner Rosell favors, and Mayor Pro Tem Iverson
I would
is
support,
favoring
I
that.
would support that.
And I would as well.
What are we
Commissioner Jenks.
supporting?
The
Plan 3,
Sewers and adjacent roads over repairs.
Okay.
7.8.
we
So
have
this one.
on that proposal, which is a $7,845,000, we have estimated costs relating to 10-year, 15-year, and 20-year bond.
If you look at page 2 of my memo, I did a chart that shows you the average millage rate for each of the different scenarios.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I would not favor the 10-year. I think that millage rate is too high, especially in light of the fact that we're gonna be going back a year later asking for a similar issuance. I would certainly like to see something more along the lines of a 15-year to keep this initial millage rate down.
I would agree with.
Thoughts there?
I would agree with that. I think 10 years a little aggressive. I think I would be okay with either the 15 or the 20.
The sewer, so 15.
Comment there. I had Tim prepare a schedule, and I think you have a copy for all the commissioners that looks at our current millage load each year. And for the next 4 years, 5 years, we're in the 3.5 to 4. Then it starts dropping. 6 years, it's down to 3. By the time we get 10 years out, we're at 1.34. My concern is that realistically, if we come back to the citizens in a year, and we need to do this up front, when we come out this year, we need to explain to them that there is still sewer issues that need to be addressed and a lot of roads that we're not addressing in this issue. We're just addressing the major sewer issues and the roads over top of those. My concern would be that we leave enough ability for the city to issue what will probably be even a larger bond issue a year from now, or ask them for approval of that, and be able to make sense of it. So I'm more inclined to go with a 10-year, realizing that we're gonna be at about that millage rate in order to pull this off over the next 25 years. It's just the reason why I believe in the 10-year plan.
Explain that to me again, Mr. Mayor.
You're looking at the cost of a 10-year is about 2 mils, 2.17 mils. Actually, it's about 2.3 mils. You can't, the first year is bringing that average down, but basically we're adding 2.3 mils to our debt, our bond debt for the next 10 years, bringing it up to around anywhere from 6.2, 6.3, out to about 3.5 mils out in 2029 when this bond would be paid off.
Sure.
Leaving more room for the rest of the infrastructure that we need to address in a year. For the voters to approve that. We can, at that point, we can bring that one in as we've done in the past with some lower paybacks in the early years and higher payback in the final 5 years of that. If that might be a 20-year bond issue because of the amount of sewers we're looking at in there, and then roads. It would be backloaded, basically.
Mr. Mayor, so just to put this in terms of dollars for the residents, we're talking about, it's per thousand, correct? So we're looking at a difference of, with this would be, for a $400,000 house would be about $870. For a 10-year, then it goes to $628 for a 15, and then $508 for a 20-year. It's $870 is an awful lot of money.
It's half of that.
It's half of that for a four. Okay.
If your home is valued
Oh, right.
at
You're
400,000,
right. Okay.
did I?
Yep. You
Okay.
did. You did.
So it's
Thank
200
You. 200. Yes.
times
Let's
2
do that.
is 400.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. No,
Yes.
just a decimal point.
I mean, it's those little decimal points will get you every time. I mean, it's still, it's still going to be $400 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it has to be done. I agree.
So what?
Yeah, no, I agree.
I mean, you can't avoid the consequence of inaction here, and,
Right.
and
No, I agree.
Jeff is right, is nobody wants to, be in the position of having, again, I don't believe it would have prevented the 2014 deal, but I believe that people, generally speaking, are concerned about the structure of the sewers, and the residents want something done about that. I think it's clear. So, it's not free. So what? If your roof is leaking, you got to call somebody to fix it. If you don't, it's going to fall in. And I mean, this is just basic upkeep. We're not looking to we're not looking to spend money gratuitously here. We're looking to protect everybody's assets, namely the value of the homes.
Also
So,
gain a slightly better interest rate
yeah.
in 10-year.
Yeah, about 0.25%. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I guess my thought too is, why not then, if we can spread out the issue, and because we know we're not going to be able to complete this all in a year, why not ask for all of the sewer approval up front, recognizing that, the project will occur when it occurs based on issuance. So we get the voters' approval for all the sewer up front with a limited adjacent road as part of that, very limited. And then once the long-range budget committee is done, come back with a larger road package to see if they want to stomach that. Then we recognize that, look, the sewers have been approved. If they also want to pay for roads, so be it. If not, well, we got our answer. But the road, there will be road construction because it will occur, that they will see roads improve because it'll occur as part of the sewer project by virtue of that and the adjacent roads. I'm just curious, does that make sense to just get their approval for the sewer project all up front?
What was that total again?
Recognizing that we can spread, so,
The drawback to that is when you go back out for a road-only bond issue, the max you're gonna be able to go out is 15 years. So you wouldn't be able to go to 20 years in that second road-only issue.
I would
So
say,
you're basically adding the 6.4 million plus engineering and bond costs, you're probably gonna be close to another $7 million.
But your road bonds would be issued over 2 series, so you'd get about 19 years. Because you would issue
you
a
need
series
it.
in 2000 and,
The road portion of that is only a very small part of it, though.
okay.
This gives us a one-year option to prove that we can do the roads, and prove that we can do the sewers. It also gives the long-range planning committee an opportunity to look at what speed they want to do roads and what speed they want to do the lining and the rest of the process. And
We're only looking at about $2 million worth of road repairs in this.
we're looking
this
at
particular
virtually a 2 year shot. And that gives them enough time, and it means at least that we don't go dead on the roads for 1 to 2 years because we have no additional funds available. And what do we earn from the fee on the water? $250,000. So that gives us roughly the ability to line less than 1 mile of the sewer system where it's decent and can be done. The thing I'm worried about is the speed at which we're going is like a snail. And that is not the tradition of Huntington Woods. But I'd be willing to go with the shorter period so we can get a much better definition of how we're gonna go, and we'd have a group of people looking at
It depends on whether you're adding the extra 7 million in there for pipe bursting or not.
right. I mean, you can apply the same concept, you just get the approval for the entire sewer dollars up front. I mean,
it.
everything else.
If we go with a larger contractor, and Dan's has been around for years, and a couple of the other contractor mentioned the same way. If we have a big enough bid, we can catch up. Right now, the speed at which we are moving to replace and correct is not a Huntington Woods tradition. We are going as slower than every single one of our neighbors.
See, I think by sticking to this, the Plan 3, which just covers the worst sewer system and the roads over top of those, that we give the long-range financial committee to come up with that
Yeah.
exact recommendation, rather than us throwing darts at it, if you want to say.
But realize we're doing less than 1 mile of roads.
But we have, so, again, as somebody that wants the most done at one time, you still can't be reckless about it. You have to be financially sensible about it, and, so, what the mayor is proposing is, I think, reasonable.
Any other comments?
I mean, 10 years is too aggressive, in my opinion. I just think the millage rate's too high, but I'd like to see it stay at the 15. Especially for seniors and folks on a fixed income, that's gonna make a big hit.
I'd like to see it at 15 years as well.
Okay.
We're agreeing to 15 years?
split the difference, right? Some want 20, some
No,
want
you're
10.
never
we'll
supposed to
just go
split the
right
difference.
You go to 20, that's it, you don't split the difference.
Do we have a motion?
The motion would be to direct the bond council to prepare the language and then outline what the parameters are.
For the sewers and adjacent roads over repairs, covering add a 15-year millage rate of 1.5706.
Separately? 10 versus 15?
No, it's just it's just 15-year.
All right.
So the motion is to direct everybody involved to prepare the correct paperwork.
We did our work. Scribner now has to do his work. Our work is here.
I'm scribbling now.
It'll be done in 5 minutes.
Well, actually, if you want, if you don't mind, I mean, we've been talking about this for a while. We've run a lot of different scenarios and talked about the language, and I've listened to the discussion, and from what I've gathered, you've obviously got a multifaceted project here. Sewer is the priority, there's roads with it. So, you know, I've been drafting language that would, I think, accomplish what we described. I'm scribbling it as we go, but there's various requirements that have to be in a bond proposal. And you guys have seen this before from the road projects. You have to list the amount, the duration, the purpose for which the money will be spent, and then identify the first year and average annual millage rates. So that's what has to be in, and it has to be factual. And so what I've written as a proposal, given that we're talking about sewer and road, so I would call this a sewer and road rehabilitation and improvement bond proposal. And what would be asked of the voters would be a question, which would be something like this. Shall the city of Huntington Woods, Michigan borrow the principal sum of not to exceed $7,845,000, payable in not to exceed 15 years from the date of issue, and issue its unlimited tax general obligation bonds to pay the cost of acquiring and constructing sewer and road improvements, including sewer rehabilitation, lining, and replacement of existing sewer lines, together with road reconstruction and related improvements. The estimated millage to be levied in 2019 is 0.77 mils, and the estimated simple average annual millage rate required to retire the bonds is 1.57 mils.
Pat,
Is that right?
yes, those numbers are correct. Can I edit that for you, please? We have a bond issue that is 15 and a half years.
Okay,
15 installments.
thank you.
There's 15 installments, but because the day-to-day
Yep.
is April in the schedules, and you pay principal off in October, it becomes a 15 and a half year bond issue. If we say 15 in there, we would have to shorten it up by 1 year. I would
So-
also suggest, Pat, as an option, if for some reason we couldn't do all this work in one bond issue, we have one or more series as a, just, it provides us flexibility. Those would be my comments.
Does the water main, does that get included in other improvements as necessary? Does that include, would that cover water main replacement?
I thought I understood that was coming from a different source that wasn't the bond. Did you
No,
want?
actually, the lining, which you did have wording in there, is coming from another source other than the bond, so I think lining should be taken out.
Okay.
And some roads are gonna be, when they're being reconstructed, they're gonna get new water main as well. But I don't know if you need to spell that out, or if that's just.
You know, I would
considered
like
improvement.
to, just because, since we're talking about sewer and road, I would want to just include that. And
Okay.
I would say, towards the back end, together with road reconstruction and related water main improvements.
Okay.
And so, as we've talked about at our last meeting, you know, this will require some public information campaign to let the voters know that this is like a two-phased approach. Is there anything we could include in there that mentions like phase one? you're saying this is phase one, and we plan on coming back for phase two, at some future date, so that it's right in the proposal, or is that something we're gonna have to do without steering voters or in any way having, I forget. Yeah, I can't think of the name, but the general, just neutral information that we could somehow convey it that way.
I would say that would not be something that you would want to include in the ballot proposal itself, just because if you talk about phase one, you haven't approved phase two. Whenever you do a ballot proposal, it has to stand on its own, and I know that you're not suggesting, but what you're talking about, I think, would be entirely appropriate as part of information that the city would send out in communicating to the citizens, here's the proposal, this is what it does, and we do have a phase two planned later that would do these other things. But I think that would be better in a newsletter type informational piece rather than trying to write that into the ballot proposal itself.
And then I'd recommend we, set up community meetings and do a number of things, a newsletter, et cetera, because voters in this community are very smart folks, and they'll understand it, but the message needs to get out so that they recognize what the complete picture is here.
What about saying something to the effect that it's sewer work with adjacent road work, so that the impression isn't out there that we're gonna be doing sewers and we're also gonna be doing your road, that where we're gonna be doing the road work is connected with the sewer work.
Well, you say connected, but it's not the same road as I understand it. Since we're here, we're gonna do that one over there too. So it's more a matter of convenience from a contracting standpoint as opposed to you're doing the road that's related to the sewer piece. That's why I didn't, to me, you guys know what you're talking about, but to me, adjacent road, I didn't really know what that meant until I listened to the discussion. So, you might decide that, gosh, that a block over would maybe be a better road that needed work, and now it's no longer adjacent. So I tend to try to like flexibility in these things for the projects rather than
The only thing is the manager is saying that this really is a sewer project.
True.
And we're dealing with roads above the sewer, so we're doing that, but it really is not a road project yet.
Not in traditional sense that we think of roads.
We're not prioritizing what road needs to be corrected.
So
We're basically just saying these are roads where we have to get to the sewer, and it's in the roadway.
So fair point. So how about this? And that's why I tried to say sewer and road, emphasizing the sewer. But maybe you're thinking, the road is really such a minor piece of that. But what if towards the back end when we say together with related and adjacent road reconstruction? Does that kind of convey that it's really?
Yeah, it's relation.
I think it's the point across, yeah.
Do you still like the word road in the title? Or
I think
of the 7.8, help me out, what's the amount that's the road piece versus the sewer?
1.5 million.
Okay. I would say no.
No, it's
Not
about
in the
two.
title.
It's
I
about
would
2
want to
million.
include it in the text. I mean, so my view on this is the road work that's above the sewer line is something that if you're going to tear up the sewer, you got to fix the road. So that's just sort of part of doing whether it was a water main or a sewer. So I like having the road language in the text because you're doing more than just road work.
I just ask it because, like I said, this is not my area of practice, but I'm just thinking about the old title object business with statutory instruction. You can't have a statute that says one thing and have it, and when you get into it, it's talking about something else. So I just asked that, that's just for clarification.
Sure. I like having it in the title. Certainly, I think it needs to be in the body, but getting back to the point, this is primarily a sewer project with a little bit of road.
Yes.
But I leave it, I think you could characterize this as a sewer rehabilitation improvement bond proposal, reference the road work that's in there because most of that is related to the sewer work.
Somehow it has to say beginning because people will think they paid to repair and replace the sewer, so it's gotta have some kind of qualification, but it can't tell you about phase two.
Well, what they're approving is this dollar amount for this project.
Okay.
Not, you know, because we may decide not to ever have a phase two, so I don't think we would really reference
Okay.
that part of it.
Even though, at first blush, I was gonna say, just say sewers, because I think it's a stronger message, you know. But we are doing more road than what's just under the sewer, just because it's cost effective and it's efficient and it makes sense. So I think it would be, as Tony would say, disingenuous to say sewers only, because it really is sewers and road, but there's a reason why we're doing the roads, because we're already there.
He said that would be in the text.
Yeah.
I like it in both, but I think you could get away with it in just the text. I think it does have to be
We
the
would
text.
have to, in my assessment, we would defer to your
Okay.
judgment in that regard.
You make a good point. I think it's, I would say put it in the title, because we are gonna be touching roads that a sewer line isn't under. I mean, it's not solely, I mean, if this was gonna be a road project, we'd be prioritizing, we'd be doing this, we'd be doing that. But, it's clearly adjacent roads, and, it is beyond just roads that we're touching because of the sewer, so I'd like to see it included, in the title as well.
I think your language makes it clear that it's the roads that are connected to the sewer repairs, even though you didn't like the word connect, but somehow you said it the right way.
Want me to read it again?
Sure.
Okay, so, sewer and road rehabilitation and improvement bond proposal. Shall the city of Huntington Woods, Michigan borrow the principal sum of not to exceed $7,845,000 in one or more series and issue its unlimited tax general obligation bonds to pay the cost of acquiring and constructing sewer improvements, including sewer rehabilitation, replacement of existing sewer lines, together with related and adjacent road reconstruction and related water improvements. The estimated millage to be levied in 2019 is .77 mils, 77 cents per $1,000 of taxable value, and the estimated simple average annual millage rate required to retire the bonds is 1.57 mils, or $1.57 per $1,000. So I added the one or more series. I removed the reference to the lining and put in the related and adjacent language.
Now, can they vote on that tonight? Or do you need to type it up and?
So, well, I think if you want me to, I can hand my scribbles to the clerk. I mean, I think you could vote on it tonight, assuming you're prepared to do so, and you could say the ballot language as presented.
We're prepared to vote on it.
And I'll have a copy available tomorrow to send that will have it all pretty and dressed up. Because really what you're approving is the resolution which submits this to the November 6th election and then directs the clerk to take the necessary action to get it filed with the county clerk and city clerk in order to do that.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that
We have a motion that was started, so Commissioner Rozell, you seconded it.
Sorry.
Sorry, sorry.
Well, I'm not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry.
All right, I'm not sorry at all.
So instead of them
Oh,
instructing
did I say
us to
six?
bring
I meant
the
16.
final
Right.
wording back, can you
Did I say 15?
change your motion to,
Yes, that's fine.
accept it this evening?
Yes, that's all right.
And would that second be?
Yes.
All right. Do we need any other parts of that motion regarding the bond language or anything else, or we all good?
I missed what just happened, sorry.
We just changed the motion to a vote on it, approve it for this evening rather than.
So maybe if
for
I
you
could
bringing this
summarize,
language back.
what I think we're doing here, so, is the motion would be to submit the sewer and road rehabilitation and improvement bond proposal, as discussed and presented, to the November 6th, 2018 election, and direct the clerk to take the necessary actions to have the ballot put on the election.
That's verbatim what I said, Mr. Mayor.
Stop taking credit for it.
He's not the
Almost a
first to
direct
do it,
quote.
by the way.
And remind me again, when's your next regular meeting?
August 14th,
At what time?
7:30.
Okay, yeah, so that's too late.
Yeah.
So,
That's why we're here.
yep. No, I knew that you had the other special meeting.
Need to
called.
vote on that.
But we don't need that second meeting if we adopt that.
I will not be at the
resolution.
August 14th meeting. so-
No, August 14th is too late anyway.
But I mean, we were gonna do another meeting
Ninth.
on August 9th. We were gonna send you back, have you type up your scribbles and come back, but we don't need the August 9th meeting if they vote.
We're
on
gonna
this
vote
tonight.
for it, vote on it
I
tonight.
agree. I
Okay,
think,
all right, great.
given the discussion, I think if you vote on this, then we have what we need, and I'll get it prettied up for the clerk to have in the record.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2 is deleted.
I would just say, Amy, if you could start putting some stuff together for that public information campaign, and then just make sure we run it by council so that it's not out of whack with campaign finance laws and that we're not crossing the line, because I think we're gonna have to start doing that for November.
Can't you just take the wording of the proposal that we just voted on, approve, and
We usually do a question and answer sheet to
Right.
go along with it.
And I think explaining about a potential
Explaining the
future
phase two.
phase two, yeah.
but just put what's gonna be on the ballot out there, say this is what we're gonna ask you to vote on, and make a short paragraph about it, about what it, we're doing and why,
You
and,
can also release it to C and G with an interpretation.
well, yeah, that's.
Yes.
All right, with that, meeting is adjourned.
Excellent.